Okay, guys, we're going to get started. So good afternoon, and thank you for joining us for the Cloudistics Composable Cloud webinar. Today, we're previewing our next major release of the Cloudistics platform. The Cloudistics platform delivers a true public cloud experience on your premises. These new features came on the back of another record quarter and are completely customer-driven. Before we get started, I wanted to quickly introduce our presenters today. Our Chief Scientist, Dr. Jay Menon, former IBM Fellow and Dell CTO, will present the evolution of the infrastructures today and present Cloudistics Solution and Technology. KP, our Senior Director of Product Management, will follow with a short demo highlighting our key new features, specifically FlexDR, that makes everyday provisioning and management as simple as the public cloud. We will also have a Q&A session at the end, so feel free to add any questions to the chat and we will make sure to get those answered. And don't forget, everyone who attends the entire webinar will have a chance to win a pretty sweet Star Wars Stormtrooper sign and a Fandango gift card. Jay, over to you.
Great. Thank you, Tessa. Good morning, good afternoon to all of you listening in from, I know we're all in different time zones. Very excited to be here. I've been in IT infrastructure for 30 years at IBM and then at Dell, and really excited to be a part of Cloudistics and to talk to you about this new cloud platform. You know, when we think about the public cloud, we don't think of it as a location in the sky. We think of it as an experience, and in particular, the experience that people think about is agility and scalability and ease of use. What we're going to show you is we're going to give you all of those features, and in addition, we're going to give you better performance and lower TCO, and that's what our cloud platform is. So I'm going to get to the agenda, and if I have trouble, I'm going to ask KP to take over so we can move the slides forward. KP, can you take over? Thank you. All right. So what we're going to cover today is we're going to talk about current alternatives for running workloads. There are several ways for you to buy on-prem infrastructure that you put in your own data center. We'll talk about the pros and cons of those. We'll also talk about the pros and cons of the public cloud. Somewhere between 15 to 25% of workloads now run in the public cloud because of some challenges people have found with running workloads in their own data center. So we'll talk a little bit about the public cloud, some of the pros and cons, which really then sets us up very well to talk about our Cloudistics Composable Cloud Platform. And you will see that what we are offering is really the best of both worlds, the best of on-prem combined with the best of public cloud. After that, I'm going to turn it over to KP, who's going to do a demo. You know, one of the most exciting things about this product is the transformational user experience of using this platform. And while KP will only be able to do a small piece of all the product and platforms able to offer, I think you'll really enjoy what he has to show. So I'm going to talk for about 35 minutes or so, turn it over to KP for at least 10 minutes of his demo, and then we'll have 10 minutes at the end for Q&A. So let's go to the next chart where I'm going to talk about current ways of buying infrastructure for your data center. And there's really three ways that customers buy infrastructure. The first way shown on the left is the three-tier architecture, also called the siloed architecture, where you basically go out and buy your best server from Dell or HP, your best storage from EMC or NetApp, your network from Cisco or someone else. And then the customer really does all of the testing and integration, and it's months before you're really able to run the first application on the platform. So it's long time to value. In addition, the solution is expensive, especially storage is expensive, the SAN that attaches the storage. networking is expensive. And it's also hard to manage because by the time you're done, you really have 5 different consoles, one to manage the server, one for the storage, one for the network, one for the virtualization software, which might be from VMware, for example, and one for the SAN itself. So hard to manage and inflexible. The first innovation is in the middle of this chart with converged offerings such as was offered by VCE starting from 2007, where the separate products were pre-integrated, so there was faster time to value. You could run your first application perhaps in weeks versus months, but it still had the same problems: expensive, hard to manage, inflexible, and still at the end of the day 4 or 5 consoles to manage everything. Then in 2012, the next generation of innovation happened, and that is the hyperconverged offerings. And they attacked specifically the challenges with converged and 3-tier architectures. They got rid of the storage area network, or SAN, and put low-cost storage, which was tied directly to the compute node. So they sold nodes that have both compute and storage together. And then the result was something that was easier to manage and more flexible. But it's fairly well known that a next set of challenges, a next set of deficiencies emerged, that there are well-known limitations with hyperconverged. One is that the set of workloads that you can run are fairly limited. I mean, you can talk to analysts and they'll tell you, don't try to run everything in the data center on hyperconverged. You can run VDI, disaster recovery, robo, test dev, but it's not really recommended for a lot of workloads. And secondly, it's got limited scaling. This is also fairly well known. And then the last point is that they can be wasteful of resources. Typically what happens is, because you're expanding compute and storage together, you end up with either too much compute or too much storage for what you need. Because one of those resources is the constraining resource. You keep adding nodes until you have all of the compute you need, and you end up with too much storage, or vice versa. And this is also fairly well known. So none of these 3 approaches that are used today are perfect. You know, they have their pros, but they have some significant cons, which is why people have started to move to the public cloud, and this is primarily driven by the agility, the scalability, and the ease of use that the public cloud provides you. But, you know, the public cloud is not perfect either. And, you know, I list 4 issues that you might run into if you're running in the public cloud. The first one that I list are cost issues. The public cloud is great for very dynamic workloads, bursty workloads. They come and they go. You can't beat the public cloud for that. But 75% of the workloads in the world are very predictable. They don't burst. They're not dynamic. And in particular, if you want to run them 24/7, the costs can add up for you. If you're working with large data sets and you have to move large data sets back and forth, the cloud costs can again balloon on you. So constant vigilance is needed to make sure that the costs don't go out of hand. In fact, our founders had this experience where they were running an app on the public cloud, and it was the ballooning cost that caused them to say, can't we do better? Can't we actually give you public cloud experience without some of these challenges of the public cloud? And it's also really the onus is on you to be constantly vigilant, to delete volumes that you're not using anymore, delete snapshots you're not using anymore, and so forth. The second issue is performance. Again, fairly well known. You'll see that our platform, for example, significantly outperforms Amazon and other public cloud platforms. And there are public stories as well. I mean, Instagram publicly talked about the fact that when they moved their infrastructure from Amazon back to on-prem, their upload times improved by 80%. And for every 3 servers they had on Amazon, they needed only 1 server when they moved it back to on-prem. So these first 2 reasons, cost and performance, are primarily reasons that cause people to move back from the public cloud to on-prem, which is known in the industry as unclouding. And so some number of people move to the cloud and then they uncloud or move back. The 3rd and 4th bullets on this chart, privacy, security, and then the issues around regulations, compliance, data sovereignty, these are always listed at the top of inhibitors for why people never move to the cloud in the first place. Workday, for example, talks about how their data is so private that they would never be able to move their data to the public cloud. And security is always the #1 reason. And there are new regulations, data sovereignty, where you can't move data across geographical boundaries. So those are some of the reasons and challenges of using the public cloud. There's lots of pros, there's also cons, and so you've got to be watchful. So this sets us up well to talk about our offering, but let's just summarize what I just told you. If you look at converged and on-prem architectures like siloed and converged, they have lack of agility. They are hard to manage. They have high TCO. If you look at hyperconverged, the issues with hyperconverged are lack of diversity of workloads, limited workloads, and I give them a 50% grade for cost because of the wasted resource thing that I talked to you about. And then finally, the public cloud, we're very hard to get consistent high performance, and of course there are issues around compliance, privacy, and data sovereignty, which may or may not be important issues for each customer. So nobody's perfect. So let's talk a little bit now. This sets us up well to talk about our platform, the Cloudistics Composable Platform, and let's begin with what our mission is. Our mission is to give you true public cloud-like experience on your own premises. Data and control remain on-premise, but we're going to give you a lower price point than the public cloud, or we're going to give you higher performance than the public cloud. So that's our mission. Now, how do we go about doing that? So the way we go about doing that, we'll just take a little bit deeper dive into what a converged platform looks like and what hyperconverged looks like, and that will set us up well for what the Cloudistics platform looks like. So here's a picture of converged. As we've said before, there are maybe 5 different products that you converge together. There's a storage product, a SAN that connects your storage to the servers, virtualization products, and then networking. So it's costly, it's hard to manage, it's inflexible. You've got 5 consoles that you have to manage. Hyperconverged was a nice step forward. Essentially, the bottom 3 layers, server, SAN, and storage, got combined into a single hyperconverged offering. Now, specifically notice in that bottom rectangle there that we've shown a chain link connecting the compute and the storage. This is the earlier point I had made that in hyperconverged, the way you scale is by scaling compute and storage together, which has its challenges. The compute virtualization is sometimes integrated with the hyperconverged offering. Sometimes it's not. You have to go to VMware or somebody else to get your compute virtualization. And of course, for networking, you have to go somewhere else as well, to Cisco, Juniper, Arista, your favorite network vendor. So hyperconverged is not a complete offering in that sense, in that you don't get everything you need to run your workload. You do have to go some other places to get other elements to complete the story. So what we wanted to do was really include everything that you need to run apps out of the box. And so there are 2 ways in which we have included more things inside our platform to make it easier to run workloads. Our goal is get the platform, plug it in, and in 10 minutes you should be running your first app. And so in addition to servers and storage, we also include the network. So you get the network as part of our platform. You also get full virtualization. So it's not just compute virtualization and storage virtualization. We also add network virtualization, which is very important for true agility in a software-defined data center. And so with this capability, as you add more apps, we can secure them in each app could be secured in its own virtual network, in its own micro-segment, if you will. It's a technique in the industry that people call micro-segmentation. And it just isolates each app if that's the way you want to run your workloads. And then on top of that, we include an application marketplace. I'm going to talk a little bit more about the marketplace. You'll also see it in the demo. It's like an app store for your iPhone, except it's for enterprise apps. And the idea is that you deploy them with a single click. A couple of bullet points at the bottom of the figure there, important to point out. First, notice there's no chain link connecting our servers and our storage or even our network. Each of those things can scale independently, so you can get precisely the amount of resources you need for your workload. There should be no wasted resources. Second point is around management. You know, it's a single platform. You can see that it's a single console, with that single console you can manage everything from the hardware to the apps, you know, from finding and knowing if your fan is still running, your power supply is still working, to how much CPU your app is consuming. Everything is from one very nice user interface. You'll see some of that in the demo. So you get independent scaling, you get management that's application centric. When we manage, you know, we don't manage LUNs when we manage storage. We manage the app. You snapshot the app, you DR the app. Secondly, you manage the network. We don't manage ports and things like that. We again manage at the app level. You micro-segment an app. You put a network around an app. You do firewalls around an app. So everything is application-centric, which is the way it should be for trying to run apps. So it's a very agile platform, very, very easy to continue to add nodes, continue to add storage, change the software. All of that can be done non-disruptively. Now, let me now take you to the next level of detail on the Cloudistics platform. And in this chart, I'm showing both software and the hardware. Now, important point to make. Our hardware is off the shelf. There's nothing special about it. In this particular case, we're using Dell hardware. We're going to have other partners as well, so think of it as a reference architecture. But we thought it was very important to deliver everything you need. If we had only delivered software, the user experience would not have been as easy. You would not have been able to run your first app in 10 minutes. And we found that it was very much better to create a complete platform that supports both the software and the hardware. But make no mistake, our value add, our differentiation is all in the software, which is shown on the right of the picture. So there's a lot of material on this chart, and I'm just going to spend not a lot of time. Certainly we can answer any questions you have in the Q&A. But let's start from the bottom of the chart. At the bottom of the chart, you see what we call the compute block, we have three blocks. We have a compute block. Going up one level is the storage block. Going one up is the network block. So we have three kinds of blocks. So the compute block, as you can see, it's a 2U, and you can put up to 8 compute nodes in there. If you need more than that, you add more 2U blocks. You can add a 9th node, a 10th node, and it just scales. Unlike other on-prem offerings, we're truly hyperscale. So you can start very small. For example, you can just populate with 2 nodes to begin with, and then you can scale out without any limits. Many competitive offerings will stop at 32 nodes in a cluster, and beyond that you can't really share anymore, and then you have to start a new cluster. We used a very different technique in our software, so we don't have those clustering limits, and you can scale as much as you want. So you can start very small, and you can grow very large. So within that 2U, you can have as much as 576 hyper-threaded cores of CPU, the latest Intel Broadwell, and up to 4 terabytes of DRAM. So there's a lot of capacity in there. And from a software perspective, you don't have to go out and get VMware virtualization. We actually have built-in virtualization built into the product. It's KVM based. It's got all of the features and some others that you don't find in other offerings. So features like resource oversubscription, built-in high availability, others have that, but one of the key features is what we call hot add support. So if you're running your virtual machine, you're running your application, and it turns out that it really needs more CPU to perform, or it really needs more memory to perform. In other competitive offerings, for example, Amazon, you'd have to shut your instance down, start a new instance with more memory and more cores. It's kind of disruptive to the application, restart the application on the new instance. In our case, we can non-disruptively add additional CPU and additional memory to your running virtual machine, and it never takes a hiccup. We also support containers. So if you have moved to the new microservices style of application development, we fully support Docker, Docker Swarm orchestration, other kinds of orchestration. It's all built into our application marketplace that we'll talk about here in a minute. On the storage side, that again is a 2U, and in that 2U you can get anywhere from 6 terabytes to 100 terabytes. So it's a very dense package. We're all flash. We believe that the cost equation of magnetic disk versus all flash has reached a point where it's just makes sense to be completely all flash. We can support 200,000 IOPS per second in that 2U, and we scale linearly as you add more 2Us. So if you have 5 of those 2U boxes I'm showing on this chart, you can get up to 1 million IOPS per second. And we use a different technique than traditional hyperconverged and converged offerings that use a clustered file system. We use direct block access that gives us amazing performance. And you have all the enterprise storage functions that people have come to love in an enterprise product. Snapshots, DR, single instance, thin provisioning, dedupe, all of the things that you would expect in an enterprise product. So, I like to say it's an enterprise storage product without the cost of the enterprise storage product, because it's all built on standard Dell servers with our software. And then the one level up is our network block. For reliability and failover, you can have 2 of them. So that would be another 2U. And then we have our built-in network virtualization and microsegmentation that I already talked about. On the left of the chart is our cloud controller portal, our manager that manages all this stuff. It actually runs in the cloud. It's not on-premise. One of the advantages of that is that you don't have to allocate compute resources to run the management server. That's all taken care of for you by the software running in the cloud. The built-in marketplace that I talked about is part of this. And you can manage multiple instances of the platform. If you are if you have 30 branch offices with Cloudistics in every one of your branch offices, from the cloud controller you can see what's going on across all of those 30 different boxes, different geos. All of that is supported. The cloud controller also keeps track of actual usage. So if you're interested in pricing based on usage versus just paying for the box up front, that's an option that we have for you. That's another capability that we are introducing in this upcoming release to make it public cloud-like for people that prefer the operational expense over the higher CapEx. I'll briefly mention something. You're going to see that in the demo, but we have the concept. This is a multi-tenant platform. So if you want to support multiple tenants, if you're a central IT organization, you've got lots of departments. If you are a MSP and you want to support multiple tenants, we have the concept of a virtual data center. And so you can create many virtual data centers on top of the platform and give that to each one of your tenants, each one of your departments. And we also, you can see the arrows going from the composable software to the platform. Those are all web services. That's a web service API. So we have a Cloudistics web service API that if you want to automate many tasks, and much of the automation we have built into our product, but if there's other things you want to do, you can use that web services, Cloudistics web services API to build further automation into the product. We'll talk about some of the automation we already have built in. So that's a quick flyover, and I'm going to continue forward, but if you have more questions on any of this, obviously we'll have the Q&A session at the end. So then I want to briefly show you our application marketplace. I mentioned it's a little bit like the App Store on an iPhone. You can create, there's a public version of the marketplace. You can create your own private version of the marketplace for use within your enterprise. The apps can be deployed with a single click. You can also import apps that you have. Say you're already running on VMware. We can import a VMDK into our marketplace. So you can use this to find things you want to run, to publish additional applications into the marketplace. We have pre-built Linux, Windows, OS, and app images. And as I mentioned before, we also support Docker. We have some pre-built templates in the marketplace where if you download those, you get the Docker engine, you get Docker Swarm, and which is really built into the Docker engine. And there's some other tools that you get as well that people typically use with Docker, like the Elastic Stack or some monitoring tools. So we make it as easy as possible for you. And you can run containers and VMs side by side. So if you have some apps that have moved over to use of containers, but you don't want to move everything over to containers, you can run them side by side on our platform. So as you saw in the title, we've called ourselves a composable cloud platform. That's an important word. You're going to hear more and more about composability. We're one of the earliest to introduce that. If you talk to Gartner or some of the other analysts, they'll tell you that they think it's very important, and over time they think that a lot of infrastructure should have a composability. What does composability mean? Really, there's four things. One is the ability to dynamically assemble just the resources you need to run your workload. You click on the marketplace, you click on the app in the marketplace. We dynamically assemble exactly the CPU cores, memory, storage that you need to run that workload. Secondly, we place that workload in an intelligent way. You know, we look at memory needs, CPU core needs, IOPS needs. We look at how much space is available in our storage blocks and storage pools, and so we place things intelligently. We also will soon be having workload SLAs, so you can control the performance of your application. This is important if you're running multiple apps. You know, many customers start obviously with a single app, but over time you can certainly run multiple apps on the Cloudistics platform. And if you're running multiple apps, you don't want one to interfere with the other. So the notion of a service level agreement and being able to enforce that is important. And then the fourth attribute is the ability to see all this from a single place, see the utilization, see the consumption. We can show it to you by virtual data center. So if you're an MSP, you know, you can see what each tenant is using. We can also show it to you by application, so you can do usage-based pricing. And this next chart basically points out the benefits of each of those four attributes of composability. The fact that we're able to dynamically assemble things means, you know, we're not wasteful of consumption. The fact that we can do intelligent placement means we can optimize performance. The fact that we can enforce SLAs means you get assured performance no matter what else is running. The fact that we can look at a unified view of usage means that you can get usage-based pricing if that's your preference. So you'll hear more about composability. We're kind of on the leading edge in our platform, and that's why we call it the Composable Cloud Platform. Now, I'm going to start trying to wrap up here, but I want to take a minute to point out that our platform is very fast and it is priced very fairly. It's low cost. So I'll talk about both points here on this chart, but the key takeaway is really good performance and really low TCO. So the left side of the chart is all about performance. You'll see some numbers there on how well our infrastructure, hardware and software, the platform itself does. We also have some numbers about applications that run on top and measuring things at the application level. We've already talked about the storage, 200,000 IOPS per second in a 2U. Very low latency. That is industry-leading latency for an enterprise storage box, 120 microseconds. And everything scales linearly, like we said before. And a single compute node can sustain 2.3 gigabytes per second of bandwidth. This is significantly better than what you might be able to get from a public cloud. Then in the application performance box, question is, what is an application running in a VM? What is it able to get? In fact, one of the customers we were talking to, you know, they were running a SQL server, and their need was to get 10,000 ops per second from a single VM to a single disk. And they said, you know, we're having a hard time being able to do that on top of virtualized infrastructure. You know, we have to end up going to bare metal, but then that is really hard to manage. We prefer running in a virtualized environment, but it's hard for us to get 10K IOPS per second. And, you know, we can get a lot more than 10K IOPS per second from a VM to a single V disk. You know, we told them we can do 50,000 IOPS. And you can see the number I'm showing on this chart is even higher, and that's because just in the last week or so, with the upcoming release, there's even more improvement in the performance. So, you know, if you go to Amazon and get the most expensive type of storage, which they call provisioned I/O, you can get 20,000 IOPS per second from a VM instance. So you can see that we're significantly faster than that. We also had an independent third party run Splunk on our platform and compare it to other, again, non-virtualized environments. And we were 3 times faster than bare metal with alternatives. And we can get many terabytes of ingest per day. 10 terabytes of ingest per day we can do with 8 nodes. Some of the competitive hyperconverged offerings take anywhere from 32 to 64 nodes to get that kind of ingest. On the cost front, we are really half the cost of the cloud. We're half the cost of competitive hyperconverged offerings. If you're interested, we do this on a customer-by-customer basis, obviously, because it's workload dependent and many other things. But we've been involved in many of these. We're always cheaper. And then at the bottom, we just show that we can be very flexible. How you pay for the box, there's really 3 ways to pay for the box. You can pay for it up front. There's a monthly way to pay for it, or you can pay as you use the box. And if you don't use the box, then you don't pay anything. It's just sitting there. And then there's 3 ways to consume our platform. You can consume it on-premise, you can consume it in a hosted way, or you can consume it as a service. So lots of flexibility in how you pay for it, how you consume it. But the net of this chart is very high performance and very low cost. So this next chart really summarizes everything I've told you. What is the Cloudistics platform? What is it made up of? Like I said, it's a hyperscale platform. It's got everything you need to start running apps out of the box: server, storage, networks, virtualization, management, and the app marketplace. We allow you, though, to scale each of the components, server, storage, networking, independently. And then you can manage it multiple ways. You can manage it through the cloud controller and our unified management console that KP will demo for you. But we also have a web services API for automation of management of our truly software-defined platform. And then finally, we have an application marketplace, one-click deploy of apps. And we have some automation built in. For example, auto-scaling, where if we see that the application needs more performance, we can either add more memory or core, or we can actually add a second VM or a third VM and automatically scale that way. And remind you also that we can support both VMs and containers, and you can do both at the same time, or all of one, or all of the other, as you prefer. So that gives you a summary of what we're all about. And I end on this final chart, was that little table that I showed you at the very beginning with some deficiencies for some of the current favorites for how you run workloads, such as converged, hyperconverged, and the public cloud. We believe we have satisfied all of the 7 attributes on this chart. We're very agile, we're very scalable, we're hyperscale. I already told you on cost, we think we can be half the cost of either hyperconverged or the public cloud. I hope I convinced you on the performance. It really is an amazingly performant box. Very, very easy to use. KP will demo how transformational the UI is. If you want usage-based pricing, we'll give it to you. Business resiliency, we've got DR, we've got RAID, RAID 50, sparing. All of our software can be upgraded with rolling upgrades. Our kernel can be patched on the fly. Our hardware can be added or upgraded without disruption. It's just totally business resilient. And of course, we don't have the standard public cloud type challenges of compliance, privacy, data sovereignty, which might give you second thoughts about going to the public cloud. So hopefully you've got a good sense of what the box is. Like I said at the very beginning, my net is we give you the agility, the scalability, the ease of use of the public cloud, but we give you much better performance and much lower TCO. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to my colleague KP, and I think you're going to love this demo. It's truly a wonderful user experience. So KP, over to you.
Thanks, Jack. Great overview. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. So fantastic overview, Jay. What I'm going to do is actually I'm going to demo DR and how easy it is to do DR on our platform. So we're announcing this is our newest release. We focus again, we are focusing on providing a true cloud experience on premise. This newest release, we've added a lot of new features. We've added DR. We've added something known as FlexDR, and there's a reason why it's FlexDR. It's fast. It's just like the platform. It's fast. It's easy to use. We've added federated flash. I mean, we've enhanced our storage functionality. We give you a lot much higher performance than we did earlier. We've added web services API. We now support containers. We also support Docker containers. We have support for Kubernetes, Mesosphere. We've updated our marketplace, and basically we've also added a lot of functionality that you talked about. So what I want to do is give a quick overview of what we're going to do in this demo. Like you said earlier, setting up a data center takes a lot of time. It's not easy. So through our FlexDR and through our platform and through our transformational user experience, I want to show everyone how easy it is to set up a virtual data center for a business unit. Once we deploy this data center for this business unit, what we're going to do is going to go and deploy an application within this virtual data center. Next, we're going to enable it for DR and then show you how easy it is to do recovery within of that application. So it's a pretty simple, it's not, I'll talk to some other aspects of the UI as well, but the idea here is to kind of show you, while DR is pretty intimidating for a lot of businesses, we've made DR one click. I mean, we've made it one click, and we sort of give you we empower you to set it up quickly and have a real good transformational experience. So let me switch over into our console and start the demo. So this is our initial login. Jay, can you see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, fantastic. So I'm going to log in into our management platform. Once you log in, you get an overview of our infrastructure. What is deployed in here? Sake of time, I'm not going to go deep into the demo, but pretty much this business, for the use case for this particular demo is that we have a business which has two sites, one site in Washington, D.C. and the other one in New York. The entire platform is deployed across these two sites, and in aggregation we have 488 cores. We have about over 2 terabytes of memory and 50 terabytes of storage that is kind of federated and pooled across these two sites. When you look to the when you look to the left, what you see out here is a couple of things, and specifically I want to kind of go back and say that we have the resource. There are a couple of resources out here that map to the sites. So what I'm going to do out here is the first thing I want to do is go and set up a virtual data center for a business unit called support. When I set up this data center for this business unit, I have to do a couple of simple things. Again, watch the simplistic experience. So I'm going to call it support. Oh, sorry, typo there. Next is I'm going to allocate CPUs, and I'm going to allocate memory, and then I'm also going to allocate storage. But since I want DR to occur for this particular business unit, I have in my New York site, I'm going to allocate some resources for the virtual data center in the other site as well. So the first thing I'm going to do is allocate some memory, some cores. I'm going to do storage. And then I'm going to give 1 terabyte of storage here, and then 1 terabyte of storage here. That's it. 6 inputs in all, and click, and voila, you have a data center. Now, once you have a data center, our next step is to kind of go in and provision an application. So this is where I'm going to take you into the marketplace. I take you into the marketplace. There are lots of other VMs out here, but for the sake of this demo, I am going to deploy a Windows Server 2016 image in my data center. So I'm going to say new image. I'm going to give it a name. I have some populated names, but I'm going to call it, in this case, for support. All right. I want to create one instance. I want to deploy it in my support data center. I want to use my Washington, D.C. Storage pool. And I also want to kind of put it in abridged mode so that my other applications on my network can access it. And then I say, create instance. Once I create this instance, it takes just a couple of seconds for it to be provisioned. And then you can go into your data center and you can see that this application has already been deployed. So let's look at what's going on with this application. So the first thing I want to do is once this application is provisioned, let's go back. Once I go into this application, you can see a couple of stats for it. You can see that it's provisioned, it's switching on, and then once it's online, I can go in and set up DR for this. So I go in and I say, click on DR. Now watch how easy it is for me to set up DR for this particular application. I simply say, well, let's wait for the machine to come up. It's just powering on. So while it powers on, okay, let's log in first. And then I'm going to do this later. Of course, I'm going to accept these terms. Give it a username and a password. Okay, let's log in. So I'm going to turn on DR for this, and turning on DR is pretty simple. I simply I have to set my backup SLA, how frequently I want my snapshots, okay, yeah, and then how many snapshots to retain locally. Let's in this case I can say 8, and then in the DR side. So once I take these snapshots in my Washington D.C. site, I need these snapshots to be replicated to my New York pool. And in the New York pool, I have a tiered retention policy which says how many, what kind of retention do I want? You know, the newest snapshots I want to retain for 2 weeks. As they age, they become, these 15-minute snapshots or an hourly snapshot will become into a daily snapshot. Those become into weeklies, monthlies, and yearlies. And again, that's how simple it is. So I simply have to turn on DR. Once I do DR, that's pretty much it. That's all that is required to set up DR for an application. So now you'll see that my first snapshot is been taken. Once I have my first snapshot, it will be replicated over into my DR site, and it will be ready to use. So what I'm going to do is since the first snapshot takes time to replicate over, I have another existing snapshot that I want to kind of show you how things go when you do a snapshot of and DR in the other side. So I have this VM out here, which I'm going to kind of connect to the console. I'm going to log in here and create some dummy data. So to create some dummy data, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to go in on this website, and I'm simply going to say, save this website, and then that will be my data that I'm going to replicate over onto the other side. So I'm going to say save as, and I'm going to go to documents, and I'm going to say simply save this entire page. Okay. Okay. I have the data, and then let's go check we have the data in our documents folder. We have some data out here. So that's about 600. It's minor, but again, for the sake of the demo, now here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to actually force a snapshot out here. So I'm going to take a snapshot, and I'm going to call it demo, snapshot for demo. Okay, and take a snapshot. Once I take the snapshot is initiated, and then this snapshot will be replicated over into the other side, into the secondary side. So let's wait for the snapshot to complete. You will see that the snapshot was quickly populated over on the other side as well. once it's got complete. So while that's happening, I want to kind of, there are a couple of options out here. When you do a recovery, there are different ways to do a recovery. We have something known as stateful recovery and stateless recovery. In stateless recovery, in other vendors and other platforms, when you go back to a previous snapshot, you pretty much end up losing, let's say you go back 5 snapshots, so all the new snapshots post that 5 snapshots, you end up losing all these. So we have something known as stateless recovery, where you can go back to any snapshot, and at that point you can recover from that snapshot without losing and create a new snapshot tree, or basically just log in and create an application out of it. So our marketplace is integrated with these snapshots. So I can take, I like the state of an application, I've configured my application, and I want to publish it into my marketplace. I can do that pretty quickly. So I've got my snapshot that is complete. I want to wait for it to be replicated. For demo is being transferred, and it's almost transferred. I was just alerted of a time check. Once this is transferred, I'm going to quickly start it up, and then I'm going to show you how easy it is to kind of do a recovery out of that as well. So Tessa, give me 2 more minutes to show this fantastic recovery. How much time do I have, Tessa?
Approximately 1 minute.
Oh, God. Okay. So here you go. So our snapshot has been replicated. Here's what we're going to do. We're going to simply do a new instance, and we're going to call it for demo. And I'm just going to leave all the things similarly. Just say create instance out of, okay. Oh, of course, I need to use bridge mode. And then I say create instance. Again, creating an instance is just recovering to an instance from a backup. So that's all I'm doing. See notice the amount of time it takes you to kind of do these recoveries as well. So it's almost there. Once it's done, I want to connect to the console. Confirm. We're almost booted up. So I have 2 instances out here. It was my old one and my new one. I want to log in with my password. And let's go in and see if we have any data out here. So that'll be the test of our demo. Go to documents, and you can see all the page that we basically recovered from there, we saved from there is here in the DR side. So that's a quick and short demo for how DR works on our platform. So Tessa, back to you. I know we're short on time. I just want to kind of give everybody a chance to ask their questions and see how we can answer them.
Yes, definitely. So if you guys can just add any questions you have in the chat box, I'll give you a couple seconds for that. While we do that, KP, why don't you talk about kind of the next steps in the virtual lab?
Sure, I'd absolutely like to do that. We have a couple of call to action. Our call to action is we have a couple of options. We can schedule a one-on-one demo where we kind of go through the complete platform, show you the feature by feature, how things work, how you set it up, how things work. And the second option is we also have a virtual lab. And in the virtual lab, when you say schedule a virtual lab, you actually have a dedicated environment for you to kind of go and try things out on your own. So we have 2 options, a demo and a virtual lab. You can also contact us at sales@cloudistics.com, and we will be happy to take on any questions and see how we can help you out with your endeavors.
Great. So we have a couple questions. We'll try to answer a few of them, but all questions asked, don't worry, we'll make sure to answer them in the question section and send you an email with anything we might have left out. So one of the first questions is, do you support VMware and Hyper-V, and what is the migration process?
So we have a fantastic migration process. Jay mentioned earlier in this deck that there is a simple one-click import ability. So all we have to do is give us your images and we will import them, and once they're imported, they will be in our native to our platform, and you can start using them. So we support VHD and VMDK format, VHD, VHDX, and VMDK formats, and we will continue to add new disk formats as well.
Great. Thank you, QP. So the last question, and again, we'll answer all the rest after this, is I'm currently running workloads in AWS. Why is this a better solution than the cloud?
I'd let Jay answer this one because he set the stage. Jay, do you want to take this one?
Yes, I will. Yeah, so if you're, I'll go back to my example. Our co-founders were actually running on AWS in a previous life, and a couple of things happened to them. One was, the costs can sneak up on you. So, if your bill is pretty reasonable today, maybe you don't want to move. But for a lot of people, in fact, we were approached by a customer that was spending $5 to $7 million a year when they were running on the public cloud, and they were actually running all Docker, and we were able to reduce that cost pretty dramatically. So cost is one thing that affects whether or not you want to stay in the public cloud. If you have very private data, a lot of people are not wanting to have that kind of data out there. If your needs are modest, if your performance needs are modest, if you don't have a cost challenge, you may be fine where you are. I think that for a lot of people, that would be fine. But I think a better performance, the same user experience, in some cases even better, because if you're running on AWS and you've got the wrong size of instance, to move to the right instance takes disrupting your running application and then moving over. What we found is that customers move to the cloud, but as they grow, if they're really running 24/7, if their workload is very predictable, you might save a lot of money by moving back to a platform such as what we have today. And usually it's as you get bigger, as you're running more stuff, as your needs grow, that's when the realization hits, and that's when people do the unclouding that I talked about, or coming back to on-prem.
Great. Thank you, Jay. So that will wrap up the webinar for today. Thank you, KP and Jay, for this great presentation. Again, just to repeat, we have the offering of a virtual lab as well as a one-on-one demo. So make sure to go to Cloudistics.com and you'll see both of those. So before I let you go, just make sure to also keep your eyes out for an email next week. We'll be announcing the winners of these super cool Star Wars prizes. And we look forward to working with you guys in the future. Thank you.